As the 2026 midterm elections loom on the horizon, President Donald Trump is navigating some of the roughest political waters of his career, floundering to such an extent that Marjorie Taylor Greene is starting to come across as one of the more level-headed figures in the conversation. In the unpredictable arena of American politics, episodes like this have become par for the course, revealing the underlying tensions and shifting loyalties within the Republican ecosystem and forcing observers to reconsider long-held assumptions about party unity and personal allegiance. Here at Continental Briefing, we pride ourselves on delivering thoughtful, in-depth commentary on the pressing issues shaping our nation and the world. We go beyond the surface-level headlines to explore the motivations, consequences, and broader implications of these developments, encouraging our audience to think critically about the state of our democracy and the forces that influence it from within. Turning our attention to a particularly intriguing development, consider the case of Marjorie Taylor Greene, a one-time MAGA superstar who was shown the exit from Congress earlier this year. Even from outside the legislative halls, she has plenty to say about the inner workings of the Trump administration, and her recent remarks at the Ron Paul Institute in Texas have certainly stirred the pot, offering a rare glimpse into the private dynamics of the current White House. Greene shared how she initially saw the push to release the Jeffrey Epstein files as a straightforward, no-brainer decision. She anticipated that President Trump would take the lead, perhaps even personally championing the effort to bring transparency to light on such a sensitive matter involving high-profile individuals and serious allegations of exploitation. But her expectations were met with a harsh dose of reality when she learned during a high-level meeting that the president was actually opposed to releasing those documents. The shock in her voice was palpable as she described her utter astonishment at this revelation, a moment that shattered her preconceptions. For a politician who had been such a vocal supporter of the MAGA agenda, this must have felt like a seismic shift in her political worldview. It forces us to reflect on how long certain narratives have been maintained through selective information and what happens when the facade begins to crack for those on the inside. Greene appeared to be radiating authentic anger over the fact that Trump not only failed to distance himself from his historical ties to Epstein, but went so far as to actively pressure her to drop her support for the discharge petition that could have forced the issue into the open and provided some measure of accountability for the victims. She recounted the unforgettable moment in detail. Sitting in her Rayburn Building office, she received a call directly from the president at the White House. The topic was the discharge petition she had endorsed with her signature. Trump instructed her to withdraw her name, warning that his friends, prominent figures from Mar-a-Lago and the Palm Beach elite, would be negatively impacted. He portrayed them as good people who didn't deserve to be caught up in the fallout. In response, Greene confronted him with the human cost on the other side, pointing out that numerous women had already suffered immensely due to these events. She urged the president to engage directly with the victims, inviting them into the Oval Office for a conversation that could have demonstrated compassion and a commitment to justice. But it seems those discussions never took place, highlighting a telling reluctance to address the grievances of the accusers and prioritizing certain social circles over broader societal healing. This interaction left Greene deeply disturbed and outraged. Being asked by the sitting president to back away from helping these women represented a breaking point for her. In her estimation, that was the moment when the essence of what MAGA stood for in her mind effectively crumbled. Her use of such definitive language speaks volumes about the disillusionment setting in among even the most dedicated insiders, raising important questions about the sustainability of political movements built around personal loyalty rather than consistent principles of governance and fairness. The situation escalated further when, following her public divergence from Trump, Greene began receiving credible death threats directed at both herself and her son. In search of protection and support from the very administration she had supported, she contacted various members of the inner circle, only to be met with disappointing silence or minimal inaction. Figures like Susie Wiles provided no response, despite their shared experiences as mothers and grandmothers, which one might expect would foster some empathy. James Blair, known more for his role in campaign strategy and fundraising, showed no interest in assisting. Kash Patel reportedly acknowledged the issue but offered no subsequent updates or tangible help, leaving the family vulnerable. Eventually, Donald Trump himself replied via text messages, which Greene has preserved as evidence. Rather than offering solidarity or assistance, the president reportedly placed the blame squarely on her shoulders, asserting that she had become a traitor to him and that any consequences, including potential harm to her family, were of her own making and deserved. Coming from the President of the United States, these sentiments paint a troubling picture of how dissent or perceived disloyalty is handled at the highest echelons, prioritizing personal allegiance over institutional norms, basic human decency, or the rule of law. Observing this exchange, it's clear we are witnessing a classic tale of reciprocal betrayal. Trump perceives Greene's actions as a personal affront and betrayal, while Greene feels profoundly let down by the very leader she once championed so fervently. Having observed each other's methods of operation firsthand over the years, their mutual surprise at this turn of events carries a certain irony. Although one might question the timing of Greene's epiphany regarding aspects of Trump's character, especially considering the extensive public record spanning over a decade, the incident illuminates larger systemic problems within the current power structure. These include issues of selective justice, the protection of influential networks at the expense of victims, and the inherent fragility of political coalitions constructed primarily on personal loyalty rather than enduring shared values or ideological consistency. Importantly, these events transcend the personal drama between two high-profile figures. They signal a wider erosion of support for President Trump across the political spectrum. Latest polling data indicates he is not only losing ground with the more extreme or fringe elements, but also with the moderate and independent voters who often decide electoral outcomes and form a crucial part of any sustainable winning coalition. His net approval ratings, which measure the difference between favorable and unfavorable views, have plummeted to some of the lowest levels ever recorded for a sitting U.S. president, underscoring a significant disconnect between the administration and the public. Delving deeper into the specifics, one particularly alarming trend for the White House involves independents who lean toward the Republican Party. During the 2024 presidential election against Kamala Harris, Trump commanded an overwhelming 91% of this key demographic support, representing remarkable cohesion and near unanimity within his expanded base. However, in the roughly year and a half since, the political landscape has shifted dramatically. By averaging recent surveys from ABC News, The Washington Post, and the Pew Research Center, Trump's current job approval rating now hovers around only 53%. This marks an approximate 38-point drop from his post-election highs, placing his once solid coalition under immense strain, and suggesting that voter dissatisfaction is spreading rapidly into territories that were previously reliable strongholds. What exactly lies behind this notable decline in popularity? A closer look reveals that everyday pocketbook concerns are rising to the forefront of public consciousness. A prime example is the recent surge in gasoline prices that is hitting families hard. According to reports from AAA, the national average cost of a gallon of regular unleaded fuel has climbed by 30 cents in just a single week, now reaching $4.46. As the country enters the height of the summer travel season, coinciding with the 10th week of ongoing international conflicts, the White House has become notably reluctant to commit to any specific timeline for when beleaguered drivers might see relief at the pump. This hesitancy indicates that the administration may have moved beyond attempts to reassure citizens or spin positive narratives around economic indicators. Many observers are interpreting this shift as evidence that the administration has reached a critical tipping point in its relationship with the American people. The era of trying to persuade the public through rhetoric about achievements that don't match daily reality seems to be over. Instead, we see a strategic pivot toward consolidating and expanding power through institutional and procedural changes. This includes aggressive efforts at gerrymandering congressional and state districts in as many places as possible to entrench advantages, the issuance of executive orders intended to delegitimize or complicate mail-in and absentee balloting procedures, and intense pressure applied to Senate Republicans to abolish or weaken the filibuster. Such moves aim to smooth the way for sweeping legislative packages like the Save America Act by removing long-standing procedural obstacles. Compounding concerns about these power plays are the backgrounds and testimonies of Trump's most recent slate of judicial nominees. In Senate confirmation hearings, a number of them have exhibited a striking unwillingness or inability to affirm basic and well-established constitutionals and interpretations. Take one particularly revealing exchange. When queried about President Trump's potential eligibility to run for the presidency again in 2028, the nominee avoided a direct answer, framing it instead as a complex hypothetical that would require weighing multiple factors rather than relying on the clear text of the Constitution. When pressed on whether Trump had already served 2 terms and the explicit limitations imposed by the 22nd Amendment, responses remained vague, with suggestions that further review would be necessary. absence of any nominee willing to straightforwardly state that the Constitution bars a third term is highly indicative. It hints at a calculated effort to populate the federal judiciary with individuals who may be open to more flexible or administration-friendly readings of foundational legal documents and limits on executive authority. With the 2026 midterm elections fast approaching, Trump and his advisors surely understand that the administration's substantive policy record provides scant material for a strong campaign. Persistent and worsening problems in critical areas such as elevated gas and electricity prices, challenges in healthcare affordability and access, and a chronic shortage of housing options continue to frustrate ordinary citizens. Far from delivering the improvements promised, many metrics have regressed, intensifying economic pressures on middle-class families. Without a robust narrative of success to rally voters, the apparent strategy involves fundamentally altering the parameters of the political contest itself. This is achieved by rallying around loyalists and operatives who will help promote an alternative version of events, one where objective failures are reframed and rules are rewritten to suit the moment. Ultimately, the sense of desperation underlying these tactical shifts may stand as the most revealing indicator of the vulnerabilities and pressures currently facing the Trump administration. To conclude, the candid disclosures from a former ally like Marjorie Taylor Greene, paired with sharply declining approval ratings and a rush toward unconventional methods of maintaining influence, invite us all to deeply contemplate the trajectory of American political life. In this time when personal loyalties often seem to overshadow public service and the safeguards of our Constitution face unprecedented tests, every citizen should pause to consider whether our democratic institutions possess the resilience to weather these storms, or if the relentless pursuit of power will ultimately redefine the republic in ways that future generations may come to regret. The decisions voters make in the coming midterms could very well determine the path forward.